Hey everyone, it's Lazarus here, back with another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be interviewing Samuel Parker from Parker's Aquatics, and we're going to have a little saltwater perspective of the fish keeping hobby. Super excited to do this, so without further ado, let's dive into it. How are you, Samuel?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks. Yeah, just been working away, changing some stuff around in the fish tanks.
That's great. Okay, so let's dive into it. How long have you been into the fish keeping hobby for?
Yeah, sure. I joined into fish keeping about 7.5 years ago. I hadn't kept fish at all before then, and I just started off with a little freshwater tank that we picked up from my brother-in-law, who became manager of a pet barn store. So we bought a little desktop freshwater tank just to support him on the grand opening day, and my wife and I kind of fell in love with the hobby from there and went straight to a decent-sized marine tank.
That's cool. That's quite a long time. I've only done it for about 2 years, so.
Oh, that's still a lot of experience. It's more than a lot of people.
Okay, what inspired you to keep saltwater fish?
Yeah, so when we had that little desktop freshwater tank, and then we decided we'd go to a bigger setup, we went to what I'd call a couple of real fish shops. We went to proper aquariums rather than, say, a pet barn or something like a whole pet store. We went to just an aquarium store. And the first one we went to had both freshwater and marine. And when we saw the marine fish, we kind of fell in love with them. Just the different colors and varieties, and just, I mean, it's one of those things you sort of see fish that you're familiar with on TV. They always seem to show saltwater fish, so you fall in love with them. And yeah, that was what drew us to the marine side of things.
Wow, it's interesting. You're into the marine. Yeah, freshwater is great, but I think marine is definitely a level up, and there's a lot of really cool fish there. So.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I've only just started learning about freshwater stuff in the last couple of years. I'm not sure if you know, we did Underwater Pet Expo in Melbourne. We had a big fish show in Melbourne earlier this year, just before the lockdown. It was in February. And I was the organizer of that, and I didn't really have any exposure to freshwater at all. And we wanted to include freshwater in that show. And I learned so much about freshwater, particularly on the aquascaping side. We had a nationwide aquascaping contest there, and I learned an awful lot about high-end freshwater tanks. And I can see that, I must admit, I had a little bit of a thought in my head that marine was more difficult than freshwater, but then when I saw some of the work they put in those freshwater tanks, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if some of the high-end freshwater setups are more complicated than marine setups. They're incredible.
Yeah, they're I love the scapes they do, like all that moss on the driftwood, and
yeah, incredible.
Really
and
cool.
The thought they put to in trying to create depth in such a small box as well. Like, it might only be like a I don't know, a 2x18 by 18, like a fairly small tank, and they can create like an underwater bonsai that looks like it's a size of a paddock when it fits into this little box on a shelf. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Have you? Oh wait, so I guess you've already answered it. Have you ever kept freshwater before?
Yeah, just for a tiny bit. I kept I think I kept a bristlenose catfish and a little molly, I think it was, for maybe, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 months before we decided to go saltwater. And that's literally the only freshwater experience I had. I never ever had like a goldfish when I was a kid. We just tried those for a little bit and went, yeah, let's go saltwater.
Yeah, well, there's saltwater people out there and freshwater. I'm freshwater, but you know, we're all different. And
look, to be honest, in many ways, it probably helped me with the marine side of things. A lot of people struggle when they start with freshwater and then they go to marine, because the two of them are, despite both being kind of the same hobby, there's some distinct differences. And I feel like if you get into a good routine with freshwater, you then have to almost relearn some of it's almost like trying to ride a bike and a car. Like, you need to have different skills. They're both modes of transport, but they almost contradict each other in a few ways. So if you get comfortable with freshwater, then you try doing marine, and vice versa. If you start with marine and then try to go to freshwater, you're testing different parameters, or you're chasing different values, and you're just going about things differently. So having almost no freshwater experience probably helped me in marine side of things, that I didn't have any preconceived ideas. I just had to learn everything just for marine.
Yeah, interesting. What was the first saltwater fish you ever kept?
Yeah, okay. The first saltwater fish I ever got was a blue-green chromis. which is they're a fairly common little fish. They're only, so big. They look, I don't know, kind of like a small silver dollar if you compare to freshwater fish. But of course, they got like a nice bluey green tinge to them. They do school a little bit, so I did start off with just one, but eventually added a few more. I've still got, well, I'm pretty sure I've still got that fish. Blue-green chromis do have a tendency to, they school together in a group of about 10 or 12, and they do have a tendency to occasionally pick one off. So their numbers will drop down to sort of like 10, 9, 8, and then I'll add a few more in again, and they're happy as 12 for a year or two, and then I'll start picking one or two off. They sort of pick on whichever one's the weakest one in the gang. So I couldn't exactly tell you if I still have my original one, but I still have 10 chromis, so potentially I still have my original one.
Okay, cool. What type of fishes are you keeping currently?
Yeah, so I'm just in the process of switching over my main display tank. I've just literally yesterday emptied my main display tank, which is a 6 foot by 2.5 by 2 foot tank that I've had running for about 6 years and 10 months. So it almost got 7 years old. We just broke that down. Yes, I say broke it down. We emptied it, moved it out the front. We didn't hit it with a hammer or anything like that. So I've got my fish in a holding tank at the moment. I do have another few. I think I've got 6 marine tanks all up in the house. So I've got a bit of room where I can move fish about. And there's only a few fish that I'm keeping for my new setup. I've got a foxface, which is they're a rabbit fish. So they're yellow. They've got a sort of black and white nose, and they have poisonous barbs on top and bottom. When they get scared, they kind of flash their barbs, which you've got to be a little bit careful of. But they're not known as a predator fish. So our foxface we've had for a bit over 6 years, and he's one of the family. We call him Colin. So Colin's coming into my tank. We've got a purple tang, which we've called Prince. He's about the same age. We've had him for 6.5 years. I've got a pair of flame hawks, which are really cool. They're fairly unique marine fish. Flame hawks, they don't have swim bladders, so whether it be freshwater or marine, fish tend to sort of just kind of be buoyant in the water. Like they don't have to be swimming. They can just kind of float mid in the tank. A flame hawk doesn't have a swim bladder. So it literally either has to be moving or it has to sit on something. So they kind of almost look a little bit like puppy dogs in that they're always perched up, sitting on something, looking at what you're doing. I've got a mated pair of flame hawks, and they're beautiful. They're vibrant red, hence the name Flame. So I've got Buddy and Jacinta, my flame hawks. And then I've got my showpiece fish, which is a dwarf angel. Which this one's a hybrid. It's a mix between two, which makes it fairly unique because it's pretty rare for two different species to mate. It is what they call a tiger pige, which is half lemon peel angel, half ebly angel, which I can send you a picture of the fish. It's quite beautiful. It's only a dwarf angel, so it's about that big. It's a beautiful metallic yellow with basically orange tiger stripes on it, I guess. It's beautiful little fish.
Yeah, I'm sure that when you send me the photo, it's probably going to look beautiful because it's always cool when two different species come together and make babies. Like my fish interbred in this tank, and my swordtail and my platy.
Yes.
And what we mix, and they're all fry, so I'm excited to see how they turn out. But
yeah, awesome. That fish is pretty special to me. I was really keen on one. There was one in Melbourne for sale for a little while, and they're not cheap fish. It was for sale for a little while at $3,500, and at first I looked at it and I'm like, who would ever spend that much money on a fish? And then about a month later, I'm like, oh, it's a shame it's expensive because it's such a beautiful fish. And then about a month later, I'm like, I reckon I might save up for that fish. And then about a month after that, I was ready to go, yep, here's a deposit for that fish, hold it for me. And I went in and it was sold. So I was like, oh, well, it's obviously not meant to be. And then it was about a week or two later, I saw there's only a couple of these fish in the country, maybe about 6 or 7 of them in the country. And one was for sale in Adelaide a couple of weeks later for significantly less. I won't say how much, but it wasn't $3,500, thankfully. So once I saw that for sale, I contacted the seller and said it was sold. And the next day I drove to Adelaide and back. So it was a 16 hours in the car driving to Adelaide and back just for one fish. So my little angel fish will come with me for a long way because it's not the sort of fish you give away when you've gone to that much effort for it.
Yes, expensive fish are not really my thing, but because, it's a lot of saving up, of course, if you're
Yeah,
getting.
you bet.
I saw a goldfish at an aquarium, probably fully sized, and it cost $150.
Yeah,
So,
right. Full on.
how much did the one you got cost?
Well, when they do come up for sale, they retail about three and a half thousand dollars.
Oh,
They're pretty
$1,000.
expensive. But that being said, I mean, marine fish. I know freshwater fish. I mean, you've got arowanas and stuff which can go for like $100,000. I've been fortunate enough. I got into photography through the aquarium side of things. You can kind of almost see one of my pictures printed up on the wall here of a coral. And thankfully, the pictures that I've taken have led me to meet a lot of people in their tanks. And I've taken some pictures of some incredibly rare marine fish, talking like $50,000 fish that I've been able to take pictures of. So I guess when I've seen fish like that, I don't view my own little angel, like a sort of a $3,000 angel, as anything crazy. But that being said, it is by far and most the most expensive fish in my tank by about 30 times. The rest of my fish are all sort of like $100 less.
What motivates you to keep going on in the fish keeping hobby?
Yeah, that's a good question. The thing I probably like about fish keeping and reef keeping in particular is that you can never master it. You're continually learning things, you're continually improving your craft, and you're continually finding new avenues in the hobby to keep yourself interested. So um, it's one of those things that you're just continually trying to improve. So it's not like a video game that once you've completed it, you're kind of done, or once you get the hang of it, the button sequence or something like that, you're finished. There's just always new technology, always new theories, always evolutions of how we get more color or better growth out of corals, and even things like captive breeding of some of the marine fishes. I know freshwater is by far streaks ahead of the marine side there, where freshwater guys are absolute masters at breeding fish. Where on the marine side of things, we've been very, very lazy. People have been way too comfortable just taking them. Not necessarily people, but collectors would just go take them from the ocean. It was much, much easier than trying to breed them in captivity. Thankfully, now that's starting to change. People are realizing that it's not sustainable, and it's also potentially not going to be legal for much longer. We're already seeing lots of parts of the world shutting down, removing licenses for collecting wild fish. So there's a lot more effort in captive breeding, which really suits me. I'm really keen on the sustainability of the hobby. So yeah, there's lots of things always happening which keep me interested.
It's great about the sustainability, because the moment the environment, like we're caring for the environment in tanks, of course, but we need to make sure that while we're doing that, we're also taking care of the wild environment.
Absolutely, yeah. Otherwise you're kind of a bit hypocritical if you're proud of your own fish tank and showing how you can make an environment thrive. But if you're doing that at the cost of the wild environment, it's pretty short-sighted. So, I feel like we need to use our own fish tanks as a good sandbox for us to learn about the environment, so that we can then apply those practices in the wild and try to keep some of these species of fish and plants around for generations to come, if not forever.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind of. So that's a nice way you stay motivated. Have you inspired any friends for keeping fish?
Yeah, good question. I guess when a lot of my non-fish keeping friends come over, they feel pretty daunted when they see my big reef tank. I mean, they have 1,000-liter fish tank with some pretty exotic fish and corals that are this big, that I've grown from pieces that are sort of only like the size of your pinky finger. That looks like it's a steep learning curve for them, so they don't feel like they can get there. That being said, as a fellow YouTuber, I did a series on YouTube called the Idiot Proof Reef Tank, where I tried to remove that stigma of saltwater being complicated, which I must admit I hadn't helped, because I'm a little bit of a gadget freak. I do love electronics and automations and things like that. So when people looked at my main display, they would see electronics for days, and they thought that is what you had to have a successful reef tank. So I tried to go the complete opposite with the Idiot Proof Reef Tank and show the absolute bare bones that you're required to have a really nice reef tank as a result. So I know I know that that's inspired a lot of people, particularly from freshwater, to dabble into saltwater, to have a go of keeping a saltwater tank because they could follow the series along. So I guess maybe some of my direct non-keeping personal fish friends, non-fish friends, I probably haven't inspired that much. I've probably scared them almost off the hobby. But some of my fellow fish tubers in Australia that are freshwater keepers have seen that series and have been motivated to give saltwater a try.
Yeah. I probably no. I don't really. I'll probably keep saltwater one day, but I think freshwater for now is great because
There's so much to do with freshwater.
Pardon?
There's so much you can do with freshwater. I mean, it's not like you're going to get bored with it anytime soon. So you're better off keeping your scope relatively narrow. Hence why I haven't done, even though I get super excited by all the planted aquariums at Underwater Pet Expo, and I was really motivated to set one up, I just held myself back because I knew that I wouldn't be able to give it 100% of my attention. So I don't feel like I'd be able to get the same results, where if I stay focused on my marine side of things, I feel like I can keep my craft and hone really on that. Maybe one day if I lose if I shut down a tank or two of marine, I might go into freshwater. But I'd definitely recommend the same for yourself. If you're building your craft and really specializing your skills in freshwater, keep going on that path. Marine will dilute things a little bit. It will spread your attention and spread your skills, which maybe one day, once you've mastered freshwater, go for it, give it a shot. But there's so much you can do with freshwater. Don't be quick to jump out of it.
Yeah, I've barely kept as many beginner species as there actually are out there. I mean, I've only kept probably maybe 10% of all the fish that I could that I'm capable of keeping in the future.
Yeah.
So there's always more fish. There's always more room to.
Absolutely.
But, wait, let me get. But the last question today I wanted to ask you is how hard was it for you to get into the fish, master the reef tanks and saltwater part of the hobby? Was it a big freshwater?
A huge learning curve, bearing in mind that I didn't have any fish keeping experience at all, really, when I set about going into reef tanks. I know I had a freshwater tank, but it was basically a jar on the kitchen bench for a couple of months, which doesn't really count. I mean, almost anyone can keep a fish for a couple of months before you start running into any sort of trouble. So I had a really big learning curve when setting up my reef tanks, and I definitely wouldn't say that I've mastered it yet. I've had some success, but I wouldn't think almost anyone in the world could claim they've mastered reef tanks. There's always species of corals that we just can't get the right colors or the right growths or the right survival rate in captivity. So we're continually learning more and more things about different trace elements or different food sources or different light spectrums or flow patterns. There's so much science there that we're still scratching the surface of. So I learned so much by joining back, shows my age, but it was almost before Facebook was such a big thing that we had a lot of fish forums. So I learned a lot by following other people's fish tanks on fish forums, and then with the evolution of Facebook coming along, following different people's builds and what they were having success with and what tanks I liked. I had a look at them, and then I basically just picked their brains. I learnt off their experience, tried to find people that would share what experience, what mistakes they've made. People are very good at telling you about what they've done that's worked, but not always so forthcoming of telling you mistakes they've made that haven't worked. And that's a trap. If they don't tell you about that, you're gonna make the same mistakes, and that's never a good thing. So find people that you can trust that are going to tell you the good and the bad, because there's no use repeating the same mistakes they've made. And hopefully you can help each other. You can inspire each other along to be better fish keepers.
Yeah, I've been using fish forums lately, like tropical fish forums. Yeah, and
Nice.
They're very great. Although lately I have been getting lots of things you can fix instead of like things I get right. But then I guess then I just have to fix it. But sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're right.
Yeah, I mean that's always the way. And I'm sure it's the same with freshwater as well. And there's multiple ways you can go about something to get the same results, and it doesn't mean that one way is right and one way is wrong. one way may work for one person and may not work for another, and vice versa. The other thing I would probably recommend, it's obviously a little bit hard at the moment with this whole COVID-19 situation, but if you can get to know fish keepers in your area, people that may go to the same sort of shops that you do or something, if you can get to know people face to face, you're less likely to get that almost bravado online where people are only sharing their success stories and not sharing their mistakes or their failures. When you get to know people personally and you're helping each other with your fish tanks, you're more likely to be a little bit more candid with things like that. So if there's local fish clubs or things like that you can join, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying lately, to just find some other aquarists nearby here in Australia.
Yep.
I've seemed to be getting some success. I found you, also found Blake's Aquatics, and there's
Blake. Yeah,
a
cool.
lot more to find.
Blake's a really good guy. Check out Blake. Also check out Aquamate. He's got a really cool channel too.
Oh yeah.
Those two guys I've met personally and seen their fish rooms. Absolute wealth of knowledge, particularly on the freshwater side. I mean, they talk about stuff that sounds like they're speaking another language to me. They're just in their absolute element. So, yeah, if you can pick their brains for a day or two, then I'd highly recommend it. They'll be able to teach you so much.
Yeah, I did a tour of Blake's fish room, and man, they were amazing.
Yeah, he's pretty cool setup.
And it's even got a little reef tank, which is
yep. Yeah, you got some coral out of my tank.
Yeah, did you inspire him?
He already had a reef tank, but I gave him a bit of a hand in sort of just uplifting a little bit. There was a few things that he was doing that we could just change the approach on a little bit to get a little bit more success. And yeah, hopefully he's kicking along well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for coming by.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great. It was kind of cool to learn about some of the saltwater stuff. I certainly learned a few things here. Be able to look back and then keep in my knowledge, or if I get a saltwater tank in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Saltwater is just a whole different world of fish keeping. There's there's a gate between the freshwater and the saltwater. And then,
yeah, it's funny. There's both such big parts of the hobby, and there's absolutely some parts that overlap, but there's some parts that are completely, almost opposite. So, there's some similarities and there's some absolute contradictions out there, which is what makes it interesting, I guess.
I guess the similarities between a freshwater and saltwater hobby is you both have a glass box or rectangular prism filled with water. Yep. But then, of course, there's saltwater and then there's freshwater, all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you're keeping water in both of the tanks. The fish and the plants and corals and things like that, they will benefit if you just keep the water good. The ways you go about keeping the water good between the two different streams are almost completely different. But ultimately, if you can keep good water, you'll do well in either. Yeah.
Well, have a great day. Thanks for stopping by.
No worries. Thank you so much.
And if you did enjoy it, guys, let us know down below, and we could even do another video together in person after COVID-19 goes down. Like maybe tour his tanks. That'd be cool.
Yeah, sure thing. That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see more from Parker's Aquatics. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!